Welcome to part 2 of Recruitment. Session with a discussion about hiring star trainees so that they add to the bottom line quickly. If you recruit trainees, I think you want them on a conveyor belt to becoming top quality recruiters. And the way that you do that is you've got to think that through. But for me, I'm looking at training them in two main areas. And my thinking is they cut their teeth on the candidates. So I would train them in 20 ways to source candidates without the web, plus web-based techniques, of course. But the problem with the web, I think, is that you get recruiters who are too reliant on it, and they don't use their wits and creativity. So for me, I imbue them self-reliance, an ability that when they find someone on LinkedIn, they can get 3 referrals off them. An ability where they find someone on Facebook, they can get 2 peer references. An ability where they find someone on wherever they find them, and they can get 5 names and they can name gather. So you train them in 20 ways plus to find candidates without the web, and then train them in 20 ways to source business intelligence in the marketplace. And a lot of that can come from candidates, as you know. Things like who do you report to, how many contractors do you work alongside, and so on. So for me, we had one of the strengths of the business that was enabled us to grow, the platform for growth. We had a particularly good internal training program and a robust induction, and then people were on the conveyor belt trained every single week. You see, you can train people or you can make it in the DNA of the business, continual improvement. So we had a half-an-hour training session every week for everybody in the company. It was mandatory. So from 8:15 till 8:45 on a Wednesday morning, it was training. And in the early days, it was me on the way to work thinking, what am I going to train them on today? But you always find a way. So I'd sit desk side with people, I'd listen to calls, and then anything I picked up from those calls, well, hey presto, this week's training session is on that. I also involved other people. So if you worked in our business and you'd done something particularly well, I'd ask you to run the training session, so it takes the workload off me. So a trainee recruiter starts on day 1. 13 weeks later, they might be ready to go on that desk. But along the journey, they don't cost you anything because they're filling live jobs. If you get that right and they're focusing on candidate sourcing to fill existing live jobs, you take away a lot of that cost along that journey, plus they're cutting their teeth. And you're training them every week along that journey. So that was my thinking on a conveyor belt, where you'd have people pushing you. A guy called Jake who worked for me, about 13 weeks in, he's knocking on the door. And Jake runs his own recruitment company now with about 20-odd staff. And he was saying, Mike, I'm ready to go on that desk. And I was like reining him back. I was like, go on then, Jake. And he was a superstar. So, getting that constant flow of trainees being developed and coached, the key thing that's missing in most businesses is the internal training process. So that might be a job for your action plan. It's also a sell to potential recruiters to come and work for you. So additions for your plan, web pages, literature, and so on. I'd also suggest this. That you train other people in your organization how to recruit recruiters. Because it's like giving a loaded gun to a child. Typically what happens is, you imagine the director saying to the manager or the senior recruiter, could you do a second interview, please? And they mess it up because they don't know quite the right angle to take. And I'll give you a £1 million mistake. And probably this is going on somewhere in your business. And the £1 million mistake is as follows. About 5 or 6 years after I exited from Parker Bridge, I did some consultancy work with one of their direct competitors. And this girl came up to me, introduced herself. Within 30 seconds, I'm thinking, wow, you're sharp. So I shake hands with her, and she said, Mike, you were at Parker Bridge, weren't you? And I said, yes. She said, oh, I had an interview there, and I turned them down. And in the intervening period, she'd billed £1 million gross profit. She was sharp. And I said, why did you turn them down? She said, the person who interviewed me was slightly late for the interview and didn't apologize. And she said, I just don't want to work for a company with bad manners. Now, call her pedantic or call her right. I think she's got a point, to be honest. Professionalism, politeness, the niceties, simple things put people off. What's happening in your business right now? Who's doing that? Who's sending that message of quality and professionalism and a whole lot more? You know, camcorder an interview. Sit down with your colleague who's going to run that interview and do it with yourself. You know, sit down and dummy role play a recruiter interview and watch it back and cringe with mistakes that you make. Cringe with mistakes that your colleagues make. It doesn't matter. What matters is you improve the whole thing. You know, you see arrogant people sat in those interviews. Come on then, tell me why we should give you a job. You know, it's a two-way exchange. So I think as a critical addition to your recruitment plan, train your staff how to sell the opportunity. So for example, you know, establishing a need. How do you establish a need in a target employee? You ask them questions. So let's imagine, as was in my business, training was a key differentiator. So I was able to position that in a certain way, and I'd say to the person I'm interviewing, how important is ongoing development for you so that you can continually improve your billings? Leading question. You know, the answer almost always is yes, it's very important. Okay, so you're going on 2 interviews with X and Y. What training and development do you get with those organizations? Well, they give us an induction mic, and what else? That's it. How do you feel about that? Well, it seems all right. Let me tell you what we do in our organization. And then I would explain to them how we give them a comprehensive induction with world-leading techniques and strategies, how we train them on a weekly basis, how we have American video trainers, British video trainers, a sales library which they can dip into, how they can get involved in the training themselves and so on, and how they felt that might give them a better chance of billing more in our organization. So you can establish a need and position your company in a way where it appears to be more attractive. So that requires creative thought. How are you going to establish a need in the minds of your target employees? And furthermore, how are your staff doing it? Because probably they've never thought that way. So therefore, an addition for the recruitment plan. Then you're looking to add filters in. We'll talk about filters, about how to reduce the risk of mistakes. But, you know, just saying to somebody, go and interview that person, what do you think? Yeah, he's good, Mike, let's take him on. You know, train them in reducing the risk of errors in your organization. And if I had to give one suggestion today as being the #1 addition to your recruitment plan, it's this. It's board accountability. See, I talked earlier about excuses, and I think they are excuses. You know, the rec to recs are hopeless. You know, it's different nowadays. We just can't find great people. That is an excuse. There's 60 million people or so in the United Kingdom. So there are some good people out there. It's your job to be able to find ways to attract them to your organization. So for me, I made myself personally accountable to the board. So, you know, we'd have other people playing their part, of course, but the ultimate responsibility for internal recruitment was mine. And therefore, I had to produce a board report. And the board report would be given to the board as part of the board pack and would explain what I had done that month to improve the way we recruit great recruiters to the organization. It would explain how many names we'd gathered, what tracking we'd instigated within that month, what PR we've had and where it was positioned, and so on. And I promise you, when you've got a board meeting and you've put your neck on the line, you're saying, do you know, the buck stops with me, you do not want a blank piece of paper at that board meeting. Because I'm an achiever and I'm sure you are. You don't want to fail. What that does, it forces creative thought. It forces you to do a little bit more than you might do ordinarily. If anyone's interested, I've got a template example of the report if you'd like to have a copy. So you know, if that appeals to you, on the feedback form, just let me know, please, and I'll ping a copy through to you so you can adapt it for yourselves. So this is really an internal champion. So the person who, you know, the buck stops with that person is an internal champion in the business. Who's the internal champion? Who's the person singing the good song all the time? Who's the person saying, how many people have you interviewed this month who could be right for recruitment? Who's the person praising and catching people doing things right? Who's the person producing the monthly board report? Who's taking ownership of your future growth? I think you need one person. You fudge it otherwise. Typically, you'll have 2 or 3 directors, they're friends, they've grown up in business together. And you get this, oh, I thought you were doing it. No, you said you were doing it, didn't you? Oh, yeah, I think I did, actually. Get some clarity in the business. Focus gets things done. Get one person who takes ownership. The other 2 people help. One person's got the ownership. So let's look at some ways to get talent to want to work for you now. Think about these 3 marketplaces. You've got the candidate marketplace, the client marketplace, and I guess you're targeting candidates and clients on a regular basis. But have you ever considered the 3rd marketplace is employees, and that you should be targeting the employee marketplace? So how are you going about doing that? What is it you're actually doing? So PR, for example, you know, you want to target the employee marketplace. Where would you want your potential prospect employees to be looking? Where would they be looking? Not just in online advertisements. Do you know, I had a sabbatical, career break, not sabbatical, I had a career break. And when I came back from traveling, I got off the plane and I was almost hypnotized. I must go for an interview. I must go for an interview. And I approached this company that I'd got no knowledge of, and I went for an interview with them. And I thought to myself years later, why did I do that? They weren't the right company for me. Why did I do it? One reason was PR. Because every time as a young recruiter, I opened the appropriate publications, you know, they were in there. They had a very proactive PR strategy. So which media could you be targeting? Of course, you've got the traditional recruitment media. Which LinkedIn groups could you be contributing to, giving advice and information and so on? There's a guy called Greg Savage in Australia. I met Greg when I was over there. He's a South African guy, and he's a brilliant guru in recruitment. Worth a look at on his blog, The Savage Truth. Some really good information on there. Greg's spoken at the REC for about 20. Greg has spoken at the RCSA, which is the equivalent to the REC, for about 20 years. He's in the Hall of Fame over there. He never charged them a penny. I wonder why he's speaking at those events. I wonder if people in that audience, 2 years after seeing him, are thinking, you know, I need to make a move. Oh yeah, that Greg was really impressive. I'll give him a ring. Now, I'm only guessing that. I've never asked Greg if that's the case. But it wouldn't surprise me if it is. So can you do public speaking, for example? Can you share your story and your vision? If that's you, maybe that's an action for you. So let's have a look now at what recruiters actually want. Because if you want to make your company attractive, if you want to make it a talent magnet where people want to work for you, you've got to think about it. We've got an opportunity to do that right now. And what I'm going to do is take you on a journey. Some of you, I'm going to send you back in time. So this side of the room, you're going back in time. And I want you to go back to the last recruitment company that you worked for. Okay, so if you worked for a previous recruitment company, go back in time, and I want you to think, why could they not hold on to you? Okay, what was it? So that's your exercise in this group. This group here is your recruiters. I want to take you back in time too, and I want you to be thinking, sorry, no, you're the employers. So this group is the employers, and I want you to be thinking, we want to recruit these superstars over here. So what is it we can sell to them? What are the things that they're going to want? Okay? So for clarity, this side of the room, you're the employers. You've got to come up with all the wonderful selling benefits of working for your organization. And this side, I want you to be bitter. I want you to go back in time, think about a previous recruitment company, why they couldn't hold on to you. And by the way, bitterness is good. I did this exercise with a group of MDs once, and this lady said, the reason they couldn't hang on to me was they sacked me. She's a millionaire, by the way, so I think they made a big mistake, as it turned out. But there you go. So bitterness is good. So, you know, we'll keep the groups separate here, because it's going to be difficult to get everybody get around the same location. So just work in a group, come up with ideas. Why could they not hold on to you? And what would you have wanted in order to work for these guys? And your job, again, kick it around, ideas. What is it these guys are going to want in order to work for you? The exercise I just set to this room of directors invariably draws out messages that you can market to potential employees on interview, with your recruitment partners, and on your website. Now, if you're watching this video with a colleague, why not try the exercise for yourself now by pausing the video and brainstorming? I'll see you back in the session in a few moments. All right, guys, so this group then, ideas. What is it these guys potentially want?
Money.
Okay, so we've got someone shouting money. Is it number one? No. Not necessarily. You've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's up there. Not necessarily number one, but it's obviously an important factor. What else? Pardon?
Can be the initial point of attraction.
Can be. Okay. So money is possible. What else might they want? Vision. Yeah. So you know, one company I know of had a Chinese national in the UK, and they were sending her to mainland China to set up another division of that organisation. In fact, she was going to get an equity stake in it. She was very excited. But a year later, she contacted me on LinkedIn, and she wasn't working for that company. I said, what happened? She said, just didn't have the vision. Didn't have the vision, so she said, I just didn't want to work for a company that didn't have that. So, you know, if you can find out from questioning that somebody in a current organisation, you draw out concerns. When you're headhunting, the classic approach to do this, if they're happy where they are, not looking to leave, draw out concerns. There might be little concerns that you can nag away at some point further down the line. So one of those might be vision. What else?
I think you just mentioned that about stake in the business and make people empowered, feel part of the business.
Sure.
Having this potential to have a share or call it pot of money, call it whatever you want.
Absolutely.
Business, but be part of it, empowering people.
Sure. And you think of, let's call it naivety or youth, whatever phrase you might want, as a younger person working for an organisation without an equity stake in the business, and suddenly your eyes are open that you might get an equity stake somewhere else. And you can translate that into a calculation in your head, that's going to be worth a lot of money for me in the future. So potentially equity's got a part to play, or share options maybe. Sure. Okay, what else? A roof terrace? Nice location. I mean, I have to say, when Parker Bridge moved from our initial shabby offices to well-kitted out offices on High Holborn, it made a big difference. So the quality of the environment. There's one company I know was working in, had an office in, what's it called now? Buxton, near Derbyshire, near Derby. And they are looking at moving to a different location. Now, that's a big move for some of you in the room. If you're thinking, I'm not in the right location for the talent pool, that's a strategic play where you think, I'm only going to get the right talent by being in a different location, perhaps. Okay, what else?
Demonstrable track record. You can believe the vision a lot more if the history backs it up.
Sure, so they've got some case studies, some evidence. When I first went for an interview at PB, I asked for that evidence. I mean, let's face it, shabby offices and so on. And the owner of the business, who's the founder of the business, pulled out a huge amount of information for me and showed me, had an open book on the whole thing. So it made me feel, I trust this guy. Okay, what else?
Fun environment.
Pardon?
Fun environment.
A fun environment. You know, set the tone for the business. Now, obviously, that we're into employee engagement now. So who's ever read The Extra Mile by David McLeod? It's a great read. It's a fabulous insight into what makes people go the extra mile. And a lot of it is not money, as we all know. So David surveyed 660,000 employees around the world as to what makes people go the extra mile, hence the name of the book. He wrote a white paper, in fact 2 white papers for the government on employee engagement. How do you win their hearts and minds? How do you get them to want to work harder for no other reason than they want to? I think there's a terrific insight in that book that's going to help with your internal recruitment strategy. I strongly recommend it. Okay. David McLeod. Okay.
Recruitment has changed as well now. People don't want any more KPI, strict KPI, strict management, don't like thresholds, want to make more commission. So an environment that allows you to earn more money, even working same amount of hours and same amount of days, but making more money as an attraction.
Yeah, I think some people still have professional performance management with KPIs. I think if you over KPI people, you disillusion them. If you get it right, the right balance, there's potentially still some value there. But if your business is not doing that and you can use that as a selling point, absolutely. Because it will.
Don't call it KPI.
Sure. Call it something else perhaps, absolutely. And that might be an action. Okay. Just 1 or 2 more from this side.
Tools to do the job.
Tools to do the job. Top quality recruitment CRM.
LinkedIn upgrades.
Yeah.
Sort of job order, quota.
Absolutely. So do some research with the people that you interview. Find out what they don't have. That could be a sell into those people. Because if I'm feeling restricted in my current organisation because I don't have those things, and you could offer me those things, you might just draw out a concern. See, the thing is as well, remember this is not about necessarily getting me today. It's about getting me tomorrow or 6 months down the line sometimes. Sometimes you might get me today. Sometimes you'll nag away at me sending the right messages. Okay, so we could do a few more. Just one more from the back. Brand. Now, PR. Where's your PR strategy? You know, PR is easy. I thought it was a mystery. I thought it was Masonic handshakes with the journalist and going for dinner in fancy restaurants. In fact, it's about selling. To be good at PR, you have to be good at selling and closing the journalist. And we'll go through that perhaps another time. But from being nowhere in PR, we dominated within 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks. We took over the target media within a couple of weeks and drove that on. So brand, part of that feeling of, I want to work for this organisation, is because every time they open the appropriate media online or offline, they're seeing you in there, talking about something intelligent. So certainly brand's got a part to play in influencing people. Okay? So this group over here, bitterness. 1 or 2 ideas from the front. Why couldn't they hold on to you?
Poor systems.
Okay, so poor systems, which actually this team did manage to get. Okay, this group here.
What did we say?
Communication.
Yes.
Communication. Do you know, one of the things I found out about myself, as Parker Bridge was small, 12 staff is easy. We go for a beer after work, we solve issues, we communicate, everything's fine. When we got to 50-odd people, I'm walking in there and someone's been hired and I don't know who they are. And I'm suddenly thinking, who's that person there? Another thing was visual communication. So, you know, I'm a deep thinker and I'd wander in the office. I'm very, very positive. I'm always positive. I can always find a good way to move forward in my mind. Sometimes I'd come in thinking about something. And once I got somebody in the coffee area saying, what's wrong with Mike? I was like, what do you mean, what's wrong with me? I'm fine. You know, visual communication is obviously also important. So it's not just verbal communication, it's visual communication, although the verbal is obviously important. So the communication aspect, miscommunication. You know, when you have team meetings, involve people, update them, involve them in your strategic planning. If you have a strategic planning away weekend, sit down with the team and communicate what you've talked about. Get their input. That builds a really trusting environment. So certainly communication is one aspect.
Many of the best recruiters I talk to or have spoken to don't want to do a lot less cold calling.
Okay, a lot less cold calling. So, I mean, my philosophy for years has been win business without cold calling. And, you know, so you teach your staff techniques that enable them to do that. Perhaps you embrace a web strategy. A friend of mine is getting 89% of all his business through the web. £1 million GP in the last 12 months. 89% of it was incoming calls through the web. Where's your social media strategy? Beyond that, beyond social media, where's your digital marketing strategy? How are you making it easier for people to win business? So that's a good point. Next group.
Stagnant code of practice. So just we've always done it this way, so we're going to continue doing it this way, and not being open to suggestions.
Not being open to suggestions. Here's a horror story for you. The old suggestion box. It's a good idea, in principle. So you've got a suggestion box in a recruitment company. I wander in there, and predictably it's empty. So I have a chat with a few of the staff, and I say, what do you think of suggestion box? And this guy clammed up straight away. He was like, I said, you know, talk to me about it. He said, well, I put a suggestion in there once. And the MD pulled it out in front of everyone else and laughed at it. So I said, I never put another one in. Well, pretty predictable, isn't it, really? So engage your staff in ideas, value their ideas, draw out the ideas, showcase to the potential new starters a culture of involvement where they can contribute ideas, and if those ideas are better than yours, you'll use their ideas. By the way, that resonates with most people, probably with you. So if you were to train your managers how to recruit recruiters, surely a message you'd want to send to those potential employees of yours is one of ideas. We want your ideas. If your ideas are better than ours, we want to use your ideas. So I think that's on the nail for most people personally. If you're not using a version of that, it's worth some consideration. Team at the back? Any more? So this side, any more? Any more down here? Any bitterness? Anyone?
Lack of progression.
Lack of progression.
Structure's poor.
Okay. Commission structure's poor. I mean, the commission structure, often it's misunderstood. So one tip for getting your commission structure more clearly understood is to get your guys to sign off their commission structure in order to get paid. So therefore it forces them to understand it. Keep it simple is a better way, but that's a little tip that, that helps to do that. So let's unpick this because I'm conscious of time. I mean, I've done this exercise a number of times over the years, and you know, some of the things that come out, fair management. You know? So what kind of managerial style suits you best, Fred? Well, fair and consistent management. Could you describe the management style in your current organisation? That might be a way to uncover a nerve, a raw element within that person. Recognition. Tell me about the culture in the organisation, Fred. Well, blah, blah, blah. And when you contribute an idea, how is that recognised within the organisation? Oh, they don't do that, Mike. Really, why not? Ability to contribute. Ongoing development is a big one. Autonomy, the freedom to, you know, to use a creative idea under the right circumstance. Career path. Have you got evidence? Have you got case studies you can give them? And furthermore, have you got case studies you can give to your rec-to-rec partners? See, make it easy for them to sell your company's opportunity. Give them a case study of success so that when they're on the phone to somebody pitching that role, they can sell that success without having to think off the cuff. Quality peers. One danger of you hiring substandard people, apart from the obvious, is that other people who are good want to leave. So sometimes you find that a recruiter is working with substandard people and that they're sucked down into the quagmire of, you know, inefficiency and mistakes, and they don't like it. So quality peers. If you've got quality people in your organisation, that's an attraction mechanism. Top people want to work with other top people. Consistency. You know, we're not just changing the goalpost every time. You know, we try our best to get it right. We're not perfect, but we try to have a consistent focus. Integrity. Do you live integrity in your organisation? Do you live and breathe it? Is it in the DNA? Or do you occasionally let your integrity drop and your staff see that? Years ago, I worked for a company who suggested to me that I go into other recruitment companies as a spy. And they thought it was fun. What do you think I thought? I thought, I want to leave this company. I do not want to have malpractice. I'm smarter than that. I can win business without having to do that. I don't need to go into their offices. That was my feeling. So without integrity, you run the risk of people, good people who might even not want to work with you. Vision we talked about, brand we talked about, flexible working. Can you accommodate flexible working under the right circumstance? Reward for effort, of course. So I mentioned this book, The Extra Mile, definitely worth a read. And, in terms of the feedback from the book, here are some other things that people want. Taking steps to ensure the long-term success of the organisation, acting in the best interest of customers, act in a way that's consistent with values, supports and promotes teamwork, treats employees with trust and respect, and a whole lot more. So you'll get a lot of this from that book. The point of the exercise is, armed with the intelligence of thinking, right, well, what do people really want? To some degree, you're second-guessing in the exercise we've done today. But what can you do with the messages now? Here's 2 suggestions. One is, you can promote messages through PR. So you can talk at events, you can have case studies on your website, talking about, let's pick one. Okay, ask quickly if let's have a look. Encourages new ideas and new ways of doing things. If you feel that has resonance with your target employees, you might have a little case study on your website or a video where one of your staff says, for example, I was really pleased in my first week of joining the company that I was able to contribute an idea. The idea resulted in a £50,000 new account as a direct result of my endeavours. And it's the first time I've worked for a company that's allowed me to bring an idea to the table that's been implemented. Now, of course, I'm making that up on the spot. The point is, have you got case studies? Have you got video case studies that signal to potential employees that they're going to land in the right place? Then you think about attraction mechanisms such as awards. The company I ran won an award, and it made a difference. If the Sunday Times says that you are the best small recruitment company to work for in Great Britain, what do you think the candidates who are reading that think? Might they think, this is the best small recruitment company to work for in Great Britain? Might they think that? So, where are your award submissions? I've judged the Recruiter Awards, and I've seen the entries. You can win an award by the way you submit the entry. You have someone really good putting the entry together, you've got a significant chance of winning it. And how you put it together is really, really important. So, having graphs on there, examples of videos you've got on your website or something like that, some point of differentiation. Jack Grattan, who won the Sunday Times Best Small Business to Work For when he ran Major Players, he said to me, after he won the award, he was thinking of setting up a recruitment-to-recruitment company. He was tongue-in-cheek, but he said, I'm getting so many direct applications as a result of the award. Now, nowadays, 20% of the submissions in the Sunday Times are recruitment companies. When I suggested it to Jack, that wasn't the case. So, people have jumped on the bandwagon a bit, but, there are still awards out there, recruiter awards and so on. Are you even entering them? Do you know the deadlines and so on? So you've got PR, literature, website, videos. So, if you've not got this stuff, it's a journey. Put together a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart with, weeks 1 to 52. With all the actions down here, and then in red or orange or green across the various different aspects, you could then have actions that people in your business are going to undertake throughout the next 12 months. Rome's not built in a day. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step and all the old adages. So start today. Implement at least something along that journey, and then in 52 weeks' time, maybe you'll have it completely cracked. Maybe sooner. Money talks. Someone suggested earlier money's a consideration. Of course it is. But here's a question. Would you guarantee £60,000 for 6 months or 12 months even to entice a top quality person to come and work for you? It's a risk, isn't it? It's a risk. Here's an alternative train of thought. So you're only risking 7,500. So let's say you've got a contract recruiter with earning 60k with a 30k basic. So they bill nothing in month 1, 1 new contractor out a week from month 2, end of month 3, I mean this is a good performer, but you're paying for that, 8 contractors out. So it's only cost you 7,500 on top of what you might ordinarily have paid. So you normally would have paid a 30k basic perhaps, but you've paid 30. Divide by a quarter, you've paid an extra 7.5 grand on top of it. Now that's a train of thought that some recruitment directors adopt. The danger with it is you've got to have your selection process right. If you make a mistake, that's dangerous. And secondly, you've got to be ruthless. So you've got to cut. And I think most recruitment directors, in my opinion, are too nice. I think I fell into that category. I made mistakes. I'm not saying lose your niceness, but be business-minded about it. If someone's not performing, there's a contract, isn't there? I'm paying you to do X, you do X. And if they're not performing, you've got to pull the plug. And I've seen it many, many times where recruitment directors hang on. Things like, oh yeah, but he's got a lot in the pipeline. There's a lot of things happening. And guess what? Those placements fall out of bed. The recruiter keeps hitting the post. It's cleared off the line, but the ball doesn't go in the back of the net. So I think you need to be, ruthless is the wrong word actually. You need to be able to make a tough decision and make a call on that. Is there somebody in your company, by the way, you need to fire? I mean, I did this event a few years ago, and I got an email afterwards, and Mike said, the guy said, Mike, thanks for the session. He said, after coming back, I realised I got somebody wrong in my business and I've sacked them. And I thought, goodness me, that's my fault. I felt slightly bad about that, but you know, he reckoned it was the right decision. So, you know, if you keep them for 6 months, it's only cost you an extra 15 grand, but you're not going to keep them for 6 months if they're not billing. Last part, just a couple of minutes on this, filters. I want you to shout out just one at a time, and I'm going to give you a competency-based framework to interview recruiters, okay? One at a time, the attributes of top performers, okay? So, someone shout out, attributes of a top performer in recruitment, pardon? Work ethic, drive, pardon? Attitude, drive.
Enthusiasm.
Drive.
Consistency.
Self-management.
Resilience.
Self-management. Technique, probably in interpersonal effectiveness. So I'm looking at drive, interpersonal effectiveness, and self-management. Let's see if we can break that. Okay? If you want a competency framework to interview people against, think of the things that fit within drive. Work ethic, passion, hunger, determination. Never say die attitude. Is that drive? A lot of it? What about interpersonal effectiveness? Would you agree with me that the best recruiters are likable? They've got an emotional intelligence about them. They don't upset people. They don't antagonize people. They can pull a deal together. They can sell effectively or learn how to sell. That's interpersonal effectiveness. What about self-management? If it's 8 o'clock at night, as a recruiter, take yourself back. 8 o'clock at night, making that phone call at 8 o'clock in the evening, when you don't want to, will close a deal for you. Would you make the call? We would, yeah? Because we've got self-management. You know, some people come back in the office the next day and say, oh, he's on voicemail, I couldn't get through to him. What would you do if it was on voicemail? I guess you'd try again, and you'd try again, and you'd try again, and you'd try at 7:30 in the morning or something. Correct? So why do some people do it and some don't? I think that's self-management. You know, updating a record after making a call. So when I make a call to someone, I'll update the database record. Will you really check on me as a director? You might check from time to time. But you know what? I did it. I'm self-managed. So drive, interpersonal effectiveness, and self-management. And what you can do then is you can build a competency framework where you can interview against those competencies. If you agree with that, you can then create a marking sheet. And I want you to think about this. You've done the first interview. You think the candidate's great, potential employee, experienced or trainee. You think they're a potentially high caliber person. So you say to your colleague, your fellow director, will you interview him for the second interview tomorrow? Here's his CV. What happens next? Well, the buzzer goes. It's now 6:30. The candidate arrives. You can't find the CV. So what do you say? You say to the candidate, oh, have you brought your CV along with you? The candidate says, yes, I have. And you think, whew, thank goodness for that. You sit down and you duplicate the questions that your colleague asked on the first interview. And you make it easy for the candidate. So you've got to get organised. If you want filters in place to prevent mistakes, have a proper handover system. So I had a competency-based framework, drive, interpersonal effectiveness and self-management, where you could mark them out of 10. You could make some notes about the person which could be handed over to the second interviewer. So for example, if you've not got to the bottom of their commission scheme, make a note. You know, Jim couldn't get to the bottom of his commission scheme, please check it out. His reason for leaving sounded a bit shady, forgot to ask, please delve deeper, and so on. And you have a proper handover where you've got a better chance of getting that right. How many people believe in psychometrics, by the way? Anyone using that as part of your process? I'm hearing very good things about McQuaig. Anyone using McQuaig? Discus? Anyone using Discus? One or two? I mean, for me, psychometrics are a tool. They're not the be-all and end-all. And how I would use them is to say, you know, your psychometric profile tells me that you're not very good at confrontation. What's your view on that? So if it might uncover something where you then show them the psychometric profile on the second interview or first interview to give them a, you know, so they've then got to comment on that, because it might be wrong. For what it's worth, I think they're reasonably accurate, but I would still use them as a tool rather than the be-all and end-all. Then you've got other filters, such as role plays. How many people role play on interview? Okay, excellent. You know, the job involves the ability to have resilience. Somebody mentioned that. Test it out, particularly with rookies, but sometimes with experienced people. So I give them a role play, you know, and I role play with them in the interview, a difficult scenario. Let's test them out a little bit. If they're available immediately as a trainee, get them to make a few update calls to candidates. Let's get their heart beating a little bit, just like ours would have done all those years ago. Test them out. How quick are they? How quick thinking are they? Then you've got references. You know, take a verbal reference, even if you've headhunted them. Interpret it intelligently. You know, I've made the mistake in the past where I headhunted somebody and I didn't do that, and I got it wrong. And other times I've phoned people and it's been a balanced discussion where people have freely shared information. You can take a balanced view on it. So on the filtering front, a lot of thought to get the barriers a little bit higher. And for me, my mental barrier was 9 out of 10 caliber. So I'm not going to hire anyone unless they're 9 out of 10. If they're 8 out of 10, I'll take a chance they can work for a competitor. Now, you make mistakes, but you know, you get the river of talent coming your way, and you have enough people to choose from, which is important, then you snaffle the golden nugget as they're going past in that river of talent. So we've reached the end of the session. To what extent do you have the river of talent flowing past your office? Do you know the key to recruiting great recruiters and great trainees is simply this: for you to stop making excuses for not being able to find them and instead to take ownership. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. It isn't. It takes hard work. One thing is absolutely certain. With hard work, creativity, and a plan, you can and will attract more super billers to your recruitment business.